Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for how to organize site data to prevent project delays. My name's Chelsea. I've been with Propeller for a little bit now, doing demand generation on the marketing side. And then your presenter is John Walls. He has over 10 years of GIS experience. So a lot of that's been combing through heaps of historical project data, updating designs, relaying updates to project stakeholders. He also has personal experience with this, with some poor data management skills. So he has in his previous lives spent hours remaking maps and just different analyses due to poor data management practices. So yeah, it's close to home, and I'll pass it over to him.
Thank you, Chelsea. Good afternoon. Those of you who are joining us, and for those of you who are in Australia or New Zealand or anywhere in that region, good morning. Again, thank you for joining in and listening to a very dry yet a very necessary topic. I want to try to make this as engaging as possible. And as Chelsea mentioned, I've been in the GIS space for just over 10 years. And all of that time is spent working with a lot of different data sets on various projects of different timelines. So joining projects halfway through, kicking them off, coming in towards the very end. That, of course, has also been passed through multiple stakeholders and multiple project managers, multiple GIS staff members, and all of those come with the same, while different, but also very similar situations. And that is just naming conventions and storage tactics, and how are the folders structured, and how do you name the folders, things like that. So it's been a constant learning experience to try to figure out what's going to work. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is trying to giving everything to line up their data, making sure it's consistent, making sure that if you happen to leave and move on to a new opportunity, that the team that is left behind working with the data isn't any lurch, that it's more intuitive and easier to manage. So we'll talk about that. So we're going to look at the root of the problem. Why disorganized data costs way more than just a few extra clicks. So think missed deadlines, rework, audit panic, things like that. Next, we'll go over the usual suspects. That's scattered files, chaotic naming, folder sprawl, and how that impacts your ability to get anything done. Then we'll flip it around and show you what good looks like. So I'm going to share some real examples from teams that I've built smart, scalable workflows with a few naming conventions that won't make your head spin. After that, we're going to walk through some of the Propeller features that help reinforce structure. And I'm going to give you a 30, 60, 90-day plan that you can adapt for your team. And finally, we'll close with some practical takeaways and then open the floor for questions. So no judgment here. If you've ever named a file final-final-final-DXF, you're in company. Yeah, so let's jump in. All right, let's be honest. Data delays are the grown-up version of forgetting your homework, except now it costs real money and real time. So having that right data ready to go when you need it can save you hours of hunting, fixing, and explaining. That means no more final-final_V3_ use this one please -final. So good data management isn't flashy, but it is the foundation for any successful project. So let me give you a real world example. A project manager I worked with had to delay submitting a pay app for almost 2 days because their quantity update was buried in an unshared folder on a local machine. So the rework involved in not just recovering that file, but verifying the numbers from a previous version. Multiply that across 5 active projects, and you can start to see how this is going to spiral out of control. According to a previous webinar I did, 35% of project time is spent on non-productive tasks. That's about 14 hours a week. So you're splitting up time between searching and resolving those conflicts and then fixing those mistakes. So that's going to add up to $177 billion worth of labor waste across the industry. So yes, those data delays are very, very expensive. You know what's worse than bad data? Data that is somewhere, but no one knows where. Scattered files, everyone naming things their own way. No folders. Or the opposite of that is folders within folders within folders. like some kind of digital nesting doll. And if someone leaves the company, forget it. That rework is coming back. Your audits are going to be delayed, and delays are all stemming from this kind of chaos. So here's a fun one. I once opened a project that had 6 versions of the final design. None of them were labeled consistently. So I had to compare each design manually against the as-built because no one trusted the results from the initial mapping. That was literally hours lost for no reason. So add to that, no redundancy, no backups, and sometimes no structure at all. Or again, the opposite of that is overcomplicating your folder structures where you need to map to navigate the data. Now, just picture this, the complete opposite of that. Your clear folders, file names that make sense. Everyone from the field crew to the office can access the right file instantly. It's not just a pipe dream. It actually just takes structure, clarity, and a bit of team buy-in. The key here isn't just a cleaner desktop, it's accessibility across departments. So from your survey team, your design, project managers, executives, everyone sees the same data, understands what they're looking at, and can move forward without second guessing anything. So the benefits here aren't just convenience, it's productivity, accountability, and better decision making. So no more guessing which file is most recent, no more calling someone who's on vacation to confirm a model. So let's look at some real world examples of customers who are doing this right. First up, we have Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. So they use Propeller's project groups and subgroups to organize over 300 individual projects across 12 separate state districts. So each district operates within its own group, making it incredibly easy to navigate by geography, track updates, and maintain data consistency. The structure's clean, searchable, and scalable. Exactly what you want for a DOT operation with that many stakeholders. We also have Clyde Companies. So they have 7 subsidiaries using Propeller and nearly 600 users across 700 sites. So you might expect quite a bit of chaos. But Cole Palmer, who we like to call the godfather of data management, put a stop to that. He implemented a consistent naming convention. So that was the company acronym, the project number, the project name. So whether you're at WW Clyde or Sunrock, the PMs can find what they need in seconds. Inside each project, they've also built out intentional folders for design files, surface comparisons, and pay app documentations. So it's streamlined, logical, and audit ready at a moment's notice. Lastly, one of our large general contractor customers in Canada provides a fantastic example of scalable transparency. So they maintain public workspaces for every job, starting from pre-con to demo, earthwork, admin, and environmental. Their templates are so intuitive that even new users like myself can quickly locate documentation for permitting or estimating day one looking at a project. So this is made possible by that team's commitment to clarity and consistency from the outset. So how does Propeller support all of this? So we're going to walk through a few key features that's going to help you keep yourself organized, and it's going to be really beneficial using that structured naming convention to work with these new features. So first up, we have targeted folders. So it lets you select where all of your new measurements will then be saved. So great for inventory teams who want to streamline stockpile tracking. Just circle and save. So we see here on the map, you'll see this, we select that inventory folder, select that as a target folder, then you go through and start circling your stockpiles or running calculations in your pit. Or if you're doing any quantities in a phase 1, phase 2 situation, those can be dialed in right in there. So those measurements immediately get put into that folder, so you don't need to run admin work, drag and drop those in later on. Next up, we have measurement zones. So there's going to help you filter measurements by region, ideal for analyzing only what's relevant at large or complex sites. So here at that same site, I just want to see what these piles here are in that southwest corner. So by selecting that measurement zone, I can click on that. circle that area. And then on the left side of the table of contents tells me exactly what stockpiles are in that region. So again, great for those larger locations. Again, something as simple as even just looking for in different regions, different phases of that project. Say you're working on a road project. You want to look at the calculations of the first half mile. You can just look at those specific locations. The next one we have is our measurement filter tool. So again, not a big release, but something we've implemented a few weeks ago. Up in that top right, you can click on that filter, and then you can start to select by material types or by the data type, by the measurement type. So slope, elevation, cut fill, or again, that material. So again, great for aggregate customers with dozens of piles on site. So these features aren't just bells and whistles. They only work when paired with intentional project setup. So organizing projects into groups, building out your folders, and setting access from the beginning keeps your team focused and reduces that rework. And while none of these tools alone will change the world, together they eliminate the death by 1,000 paper cuts. That's steady, intentional data discipline and the kind of buy-in that Cole Palmer inspires that helps teams scale and succeed. Now, Propeller gives you some powerful tools to do this, like those workspaces, management filters, public, private data layers. But remember, this isn't just a Propeller thing. Other systems have their benefits as well. So the key is using what you have, but using it well. So don't rely on the software. Make sure you have internal clarity around structure and roles. So let's talk about scaling. If you're managing multiple sites or teams, who owns what? Who has access? Who's allowed to edit? Clarifying that up front saves major headaches later on. So, pro tip, write down the rules before you get big. Standard operating procedures work best when they're proactive, not reactive. And you shouldn't need a PhD to interpret a file name. So let's stop the madness of update 3 underscore but not final underscore DWG. Instead, use a format like site, then date, then data type, and then version. You can even automate some of this if you're working in a centralized platform. Dates are one of the most commonly misconstrued or inconsistent type of naming possible. Here in the US, we typically go, month, date, year. That's almost a complete opposite in most other locations. It's day, month, and year. So how do you organize that? Here at Propeller, we're a global company. So we've got offices in Europe, North America, Australia, of course, that all have that to look at each other's data. How do we organize those to where it's effective? When you're putting dates on it, I like to use the year, date, year, month, day. So things like 2025, 05, 28 would be a good example of what you can do. So finding what that structure is going to work for you and your team is the best way to go about doing that. So team adoption is that magic ingredient. If it makes sense and is easy to follow, people are going to use it. So some tips: use a cheat sheet or reference documentation. Baking those naming rules into the onboarding is another great opportunity to establish that credibility and that muscle memory from day one. Additionally, you can also just use drop downs or predefined fields. So instead of leaving it to open interpretation like a free text field, put it in a standard drop down option. That way, nobody else can you can't break that rule. So if your system allows that, that's another great opportunity to standardize that naming convention. Also, just keep it short. Avoid special characters and don't ever label anything as new. Everything is new or nothing is new, right? So never label it as new. So by taking just this information we've given you today, there's a 1 hour plan we can start with just to get this implementation started. So 1, create a shared naming template. Test it out on your most recent job. Share it with your team, get that feedback, and then lock it in for future use. So once you get off the webinar today, just look at one project. Just start small. Figure out what you think is going to be the best thing to implement from a naming convention, from a formatted standpoint, and then scale it up. So that simple, testable, and repeatable method is the way to go. So think of this like brushing your teeth. Not glamorous, but it is very necessary. So common upload sins include duplicate files, outdated data sets, missing metadata. Before you upload, check your timestamps, remove any duplicates, Ensure things like the correct coordinate reference system are used and what file type that is. Keep the original file names when uploading into a shared system. So if you're migrating data into Propeller or any other system, start small. Choose that one active project, upload it cleanly, then build that workflow, and then you expand. So if you're wondering where to start fixing the mess, do a data audit. What's worth keeping? How much of that data in your project folder is still necessary today versus what it was when you first kicked off the project maybe 4 or 5 years ago? Assign an owner. Have a data steward in mind that's going to be, to put it bluntly, just as anal about those things that they can go back and make sure that the rest of the team is following up on that. So find that person who's going to be in charge and have them make sure the accountability is maintained. Set that standard. So define the naming conventions, your folder structures, and your permissions. Then you communicate that with the rest of the team. So training and reinforcement matter more than anything else. They matter more than perfection. So those quick wins are going to matter. Start with one survey, clean the files, organize the folder, celebrate it, and then keep going. So no one wants to be the person who can't find the documentation during an audit. But with clean backups, archives, I clicked too many buttons. There we go. But with clean backups, archives, reliable storage plan, you're not going to be the one who can't find the data. So I've seen customers keep everything on one drive and others with a dozen USBs labeled final. Don't do that. So a Propeller customer recently did save a few $1,000s when they were able to respond to a pay app audit with exact surfaces, dates, and quantities within minutes of request. So that kind of access builds trust with clients and makes you look good internally. Set backup reminders, label archive data with dates, keep that redundant storage when appropriate, and make sure someone's got that job that has that oversight. Audits aren't an if, but they're more of a when. I'm going to give you another bit of a personal anecdote before we jump into this last slide. And this is, it just reminds me of my last job. We were on a very large project, kicked off in 2012. I joined in 2019. So project been on for about 6-7 years at this point. Had gone through multiple stakeholders internally. We're also sharing data with multiple state agencies and federal agencies in different parts of the country. Now, each of them had their own specific naming standard. And so we would have to go through and audit every single data deliverable back to that agency on a monthly basis to make sure that we were maintaining that naming convention across, or they would kick that data back to us. Even something as simple as having the wrong date or the date format inaccurate, they would send it back to us. And there was a score that was kept on our company that if we sent data enough times back to them and they kept kicking it back, our score would drop. Now, what this would do is essentially would affect future work or future permitting issues. They'd have to go through and start running their own audits on our data. So as long as we're maintaining that, we could, be confident that the data we were given was authoritative. So something as simple as getting the right year, month, date structure is important. That metadata is extremely valuable. And so when you're talking about external stakeholders, that's something you want to consider when you're creating these naming conventions. That, do I have to share this data with someone else? So they already have a naming convention in place that I need to meet. You don't want to have to do this 3 or 4 times to meet different deliverables, different agency requirements. So definitely keep that in mind when you're creating the structure. So again, I'm going to start back with that start small, that win big mentality. So the world example that I mentioned there is a great example of just getting started with that one project. Cole Palmer from Clyde Company is going to bring him up because he's a great conversation with him. He described their approach as rooted in one of their core values, and that is continuous improvement. So it all started in team discussions and manager meetings when they saw a need to standardize data management, especially as new users were coming into Propeller more frequently. So they began with a naming convention rollout of mass communication through their construction technology group. At first, yes, there were mistakes, but they did expect that. But every misstep became a learning opportunity. And if someone broke that standard, they'd get a quick reminder and a note about why it matters. Where it really took off was when Lance Greer, also at WW Clyde, organized a company-wide summit. Cole and his team presented the standards they had tested and refined, and that session brought all the sister companies into alignment with a shared approach. It wasn't perfect overnight, but it gave them a structure to build on. Even today, Cole says they're dialed in on survey and site uploads, but they're still working on getting the same level of consistency for measurements and design files. So that continuous improvement, not perfection, that's the goal. Perhaps most importantly, they went back and fixed legacy sites to match the new structure. That way, anyone entering Propeller or any of the other systems, they see that one clear standard. So not old versus new. That clarity reinforces adoption and keeps everything consistent. What about a consistency and a 90-day plan, right? So we don't have to boil the ocean here. Here are 3 things that you can do today. 1, pick a naming convention. Figure out what's going to be the most direct way to communicate what that thing is in the most direct and simplistic manner. So pick that naming convention, something that's repeatable. Doesn't have to be 9 or 10 different things in there. Number 2, build a folder structure and share it with your team. Doesn't have, again, you don't want to have folder. Doesn't have to be nested. Get your designs in there, your pay app quantities, your applications for permitting. You can really just keep it really simple. You can also break it out by department if you need to, environmental, project management, estimation, things like that. So build that folder structure, share it with the team. And then 3, set up a clean upload workflow. Make this as simple and as easy as possible, whether you're uploading into Propeller or you're uploading into Civil 3D or you're uploading into Autodesk Cloud or Trimble Connect, whatever that is. Keep that upload workflow as simple and as repeatable as possible. Start with a single project or a team and grow from there. Think of it like doing data laundry, small loads, not one giant pile. And remember, the fix doesn't come from just one tool. It comes from having a clear standard, visible ownership, and making it easy for your team to follow those processes. If it's harder to break the rule than to follow it, you're on the right track. Up on the screen here, we've had a 30, 60, day, 90 plan. So let me go through this in just a bit more detail. So it's going to be structured and that real lived experience. So in 30 days, let's audit your current folder structures, clean up at least one active project, and test a proposed naming convention. Communicate the standard to that small pilot group. Once you've got that established, once you've got that buy-in from that small pilot group, then you roll it up. So this is your next 30 days. So your 60-day plan is then to implement that standard with a set of high performers across several active projects. Gather their feedback, make those adjustments, and then begin aligning historical data to match. One of the biggest keys to success here is that data steward position. Have that identified at the beginning of a project. You know, you're going to have company-wide standards that you're matching, but that project steward is going to make sure that this is then maintained throughout the life of that project. So whether they leave or not, you still have a standard in place. Then you have another enforcer that steps in. As people rotate in and out of projects over those multiple year projects, you're going to be consistent, right? So that data steward, that's the one person that's going to be the most critical success to this being implemented across a company-wide buy-in. Having that 1 or 2 persons per project to maintain this. And that part's up to the last 90 days, or your last 30-day goal. That 90-day goal is to host a company-wide meeting to formalize and roll out the standard. So reinforce that accountability, assign those data stewards, schedule periodic reviews to sustain progress. Again, this is iterative. This isn't going to be perfect day one. This is going to be a long-term solution. It's going to be a long-running procedure to make sure that everything is maintained throughout the life of your projects and then on to other projects. So by standardizing new and legacy projects alike, you're going to avoid that confusion and set a consistent precedent for everyone who's going to touch that data. Breaking it down into phases, you make it a little less overwhelming and more likely to stick. So again, I know it's been a rather dry topic, but again, I took this on because I really enjoy talking about it as much as it pains me on occasion to say, yeah, I did an awful job managing data for years before I realized what good data management could look like. So I hope you got some good information out of today. If you do have any questions, by all means, please pop them into the chat. And that's our next step, is Q&A. So Chelsea, we've got anything that's come in yet so far?
That's all really good stuff. I feel like now, like, the volume of data is never the issue. It's just like, where is it? I know it exists, but
Correct.
who's
Yeah.
to say? So a super important topic. So we do have one question. So it's, what Propeller features help most with staying organized?
Yeah, so some of the things I talked about there earlier, we have several different ways to keep your project data organized. So one, within the project itself, we've got folders. So you can set up, whether that's in the measurement tab or in the design tab, you can set up folders to keep your 2D line work, your PDF files, your 3D designs, your surface models, things like that, your grading plans, mine plans, things like that can all be put into one folder. We're going to be releasing a feature here within the next couple months that is nested folders. So a subfolder within a folder. So things like if you want to archive data, that's going to be the option for you within a subfolder itself. So we can do that now by creating an archive folder, but you can also now archive within an existing management structure. We've also got ways to manage people. So manage traffic on your site. Things with the permissions and the project teams. You can put all of your estimators in one group. You can put your foreman in another group. If you're working with a subcontractor, you can have a sub as a team that's assigned to projects. So that's another way to go about doing it from an admin perspective. Those site groups I talked about earlier, great way, especially from the DOT perspective. You've got multiple divisions within a state. They only need to see their data. They don't need to see the other 13 or 14 divisions in there. So you just give them access to that one in that site group option. So that's a great opportunity as well. And then workspaces. So workspaces, I mentioned that earlier. So workspaces, right now, you jump into a project and it starts off as a default workspace. Now you can have your inventory manager have their own workspace so that their folders are relevant only in their project, so nobody else needs to see that. Maybe you've got environmental permitting that's looking at SWIP compliance. Their applications are in there. They can be in their own workspace. So we have public workspaces, which everybody has. We also have a private workspace option as well. So you can set it to where if you have private workspaces, you can set, say, you're an inventory manager, you don't want anybody else messing with those polygonal boundaries of the stockpiles or how the base is set. So you can lock that folder down to where nobody else can get in there. And then those last couple of things I touched on towards the middle of that were the newer features were released, those the targeted folders. Just a simple admin task to just say, I'm going to put all of my next few measurements directly in this folder. So click on that, set that folder, run your calculations, all of them go directly to that folder so nothing gets missed. The filter options. So quite a few options that we can use to organize data in Propeller itself.
Okay, good stuff. So we have one more question. So shoot them now. We do have plenty of time to go over them. So if you're thinking of anything, we're happy to answer. So the last one that we have is, should we fix legacy projects or just start fresh with new ones?
Do both if you can. Starting fresh going forward, but gradually cleaning up those high value legacy sites will show that consistency. And data is important. Trusting that data is even more important. So if you trust the data because it's been labeled intentionally, someone has put their due diligence into making sure it's not, again, 75 underscores and new V3, new V2, right? There's so many different ways you can do that. So that consistency is going to build that trust. So especially if you have those new members that are trying to find that data, again, as someone who's come into a project halfway through and you have a project manager says, oh, I need an updated map on this. You're like, I don't know where any of that data is because I can't even understand this database or the structure of this folder. It's just insanely difficult. So start new, go back to your legacy when necessary, especially if it's still even somewhat active. So I would start there.
Okay, that's great advice. Also necessary for me as well. So all departments are
all
impacted
departments,
by this. Okay, well, thank you all for joining us. This has been a fun conversation. Appreciate you giving us that overview, John. I will send you all the video and like transcription of this conversation later this week. Yeah, great. Thanks for all joining. Have a great day.
Yeah, thanks everybody.